Hydration isn't only for athletes training, it's for all of us. It's a huge part of daily maintenance. When I was in Japan back in July, I spent plenty of time outdoors, walking from place to place. Just a hot, sweaty mess. While those convenience stores along the way had some refreshing drinks like Pocari Sweat, there was one thing I wish I had brought along with me for the trip. Liquid IV, the #1 powdered hydration brand in America. I found out about Liquid IV after getting back, and I'll say the convenient packaging alone makes this a must-bring wherever you're going, be it any type of travel, business or pleasure, after a workout, sometime outside in the heat, or maybe just after a long night with friends. With only one stick and 16 ounces of water, Liquid IV hydrates you 2 times faster and more efficiently than water alone, while taking in 5 essential vitamins, that's B3, B5, B6, B12, and C, and 3 times the electrolytes as leading sports drinks. It comes in 12 tasty flavors. My favorite, personally, is strawberry lemonade and tropical punch. Real people, real flavor, real hydrating. Get 20% off when you go to liquidiv.com and use Krewe of Japan, KREWEOFJAPAN, at checkout. That's 20% off anything you order when shopping Better Hydration today using promo code Krewe of Japan at liquidiv.com. What are you waiting for? Get hydrated. Hello, I'm Doug, and welcome to the Krewe of Japan podcast, a weekly podcast where we take you on audio journeys through Japanese culture.
This time on Krewe of Japan podcast.
Welcome back to our podcast. On March 11th, 2024, about 4 days prior to this episode's release, Japan and the world remembered the devastation of the events from the 2011 Great East Japan earthquake and tsunami. Unfortunately, the impacts of this catastrophe continued past March 11th, not only in the immediate form of aftershocks and nuclear disaster at the Fukushima Daiichi Plant, but also changing the lives of the residents who called Fukushima and the rest of the Tohoku region their home for years to come. As I have mentioned many times on this podcast, this disaster hit hard for me as I called the coastal city of Iwaki, which is situated on the southeast corner of Fukushima Prefecture, my home from 2007 to 2010. Many of my close friends and colleagues were still located in Fukushima at the time of the disaster, and many of those friends remained in Fukushima for years beyond 2011, contributing to the ongoing rebuilding of the community in whatever way they could. One of those people that I'm so fortunate to call a friend is William McMichael. We both arrived on the JET program in 2007, starry-eyed and excited to start our lives in Fukushima. Granted, we are on completely opposite ends of the prefecture. And while I left Fuku in 2010 to return back to the United States, William, or as I know him, Billy, had planted his roots in his local community. And when this terrible disaster struck, Billy found some incredible ways to give back to Fukushima's disaster-impacted communities that he had grown to care about so deeply. As the years passed and Fukushima continued down its path to recovery post-March 11th, Billy pioneered efforts to share Fukushima's story with the world, including being an integral role in promoting Fukushima through some educational and life-changing initiatives. In today's episode, we explore educational tourism through the lens of Fukushima University's Fukushima Ambassadors Program.
We got these students to come, and it was a small program at first. It was just 10 days, just 10 students, and I think we had about 20 Japanese students, and we just spent 2 weeks doing volunteer work. They did homestays at temporary housings. They stayed with tsunami victims, basically, at their homes. And we just did a lot of activities trying to help the communities, but also learn about the situation in Fukushima and how to communicate that with the rest of the world.
The prefecture's Hope Tourism Initiative.
We call it hope tourism for that reason, because we want people to feel the hope that we have for this area. There's hope that, although we're not fully recovered yet, we're definitely going to be able to do this. And also by people coming, it gives the region hope too, that misconceptions about the area or any reputational damage will be overcome by these people coming here and being inspired and learning lessons from it and taking those back and communicating them. So the hope sort of goes both ways.
And how this is being used as an avenue to allow visitors of all ages an opportunity to witness firsthand the community's resilience and strength to move forward towards a brighter future.
Already, just living in Fukushima and seeing how the community was responding and all the stories that I was hearing, I really felt people could learn so much from just being in Fukushima and experiencing and hearing the stories. Not only would it help them lose any, misconceptions that they have of the area, it would also teach a lot of us about empathy and how important it is to just care about each other.
Together with Billy as our guide, we're going to learn more about the approaches that Fukushima is taking to reinvigorate a region through educational tourism. Let's go. Here's what's going on with Japan Society New Orleans. Be sure to check the show notes for links and more information. Here we go. The 2024 Matsue New Orleans Sister City Exchange Program application is now live. This year celebrates the 30th anniversary of the sister city relationship, and you won't want to miss out on this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Check the Japan Society website for more information, qualifications, and most importantly, the application itself. On Sunday, March 24th, Japan Society will be doing a group tour of the Go for Broke Spirit Legacy and Portraits exhibit at the World War II Museum. Check out the Japan Society event calendar for pricing and more details. For more information and details about these events and future events, follow us on the website and social media. Everything will be linked out in the show notes. Hope to see you there. This week, we are going to sit down with a friend of mine, a good friend of mine from many moons ago. Well, I don't want to say almost 20 years because that's 3 more years from when we met. So
Yes,
17 years ago.
Oh my God. Yeah, thanks for making me feel old.
Yeah, the Deputy Director of the International Center at Fukushima University and Associate Professor, William McMichael, or as I call him, Billy. But that's how I met you. So Billy or William, what do you prefer me to call you on this podcast?
I think let's go with Billy. Yeah.
All right, there you go. More casual.
William, yeah. William sounds way too official, I think.
Welcome to the podcast.
No, thanks for having me. I'm really excited to be here. Thank you.
Of course, as always, Jen is here with me. Hey, Jen.
Yeah, you can never forget me.
I know, right? So before we get started on our topic for today, what we do is we always ask our guests a very general icebreaker that we tie into New Orleans, since we're a New Orleans-based podcast. And we want to see if you have a connection to New Orleans, which I know you kind of do because you've been here before. I met with you last time you were here. So I wanted to ask you, what is your fondest memory, or what do you think of when you hear New Orleans?
Wasn't it almost 10 years ago, I guess, that I went to New Orleans? I think it was about 2015, right? When I got to go there.
After Noah was born? Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, that's right. Oh, yes. He was still in a stroller, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah. My God, I can't believe it's almost 10 years ago.
Yeah.
But wow, no, I just loved New Orleans and Louisiana. I was also is it Baton Rouge? Is that right? I was visiting Louisiana State University for work.
Right.
But man, so many good memories. The food, obviously, all the amazing places you took me. Is it Bourbon Street? Was that right?
Well, I don't think we went to Bourbon Street. We went to Giacomo's for dinner.
Oh, that's right. Yeah,
and then we went to I think the Sazerac bar after.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
But yeah, we had a nice little nightcap.
Yeah. So obviously the food was amazing. The people were amazing. The hospitality was incredible. But I guess when I think about New Orleans, just because of the work I do, I work a lot with tourism. Mm-hmm. So I guess the one word that really hits me when I think about New Orleans is comeback city. And the fact that although obviously in 2005 with Hurricane Katrina, there was a lot of hardship, it was able to really come back as a city and rebrand itself and also use tourism as a tool for, passing down its histories, the lessons that were learned, and also just package it all with the amazing things that New Orleans has to offer. And it's actually something that we're really at Fukushima right now, we look up to as a role model, as a great example of what we can do here. Obviously, we're using tourism to rebrand the place and get people to understand the amazing things about it. Yeah. So when I think of New Orleans, that's what I think of, I think.
Awesome. A lot of times we get food. A lot of times we get jazz, Mardi Gras.
Yeah.
Katrina has come up a couple times. But yeah, tourism in Katrina tied together, like post-Katrina tourism. I think that's the first, huh, Jen?
Yeah, I have to say, I think it is. Yeah.
You mentioned Fukushima. Obviously, what we're going to be talking about is that nature of what Fukushima is doing currently with their tourism initiatives and whatnot. But tell us a little bit about your relationship with Japan and how you ended up being in Fukushima, of all places.
Well, I'm actually half Japanese. My mother's Japanese and my father's a 6th generation Canadian. So I've always had ties with Japan just through my mother. But when I was 5 years old, my father wanted me to3 the language and learn the culture. So we actually moved from Vancouver, Canada, where I was born. And we lived in the Shikoku Islands, actually, in Japan. Yes, yeah, for 3 years.
Okay.
Yeah. So from ages 5 to 8.
I didn't know that.
And yeah, that's how it all started. And I really picked up the language, and the culture, and I fell in love with it. When I moved to Japan when I was 5, I didn't speak a single word of Japanese, but my father swears within maybe 3 or 4 months, I apparently forgot all my English and I was only speaking Japanese. That's how much I loved it. You're 5 years old, right? And you go there and there's all this anime and manga and also our whole family, we were sort of treated as semi-celebrities because we were the only Canadian family living there. So we were always on the news. We even got to meet the emperor when he visited. And I just loved it, right? So I quickly forgot all my English and switched completely to Japanese, which was what my dad wanted. So he was really happy about that. But then we moved back to Vancouver, Canada, and I always wanted, because I was able to speak Japanese by then and I understood Japanese culture, I wanted to work in a position where I could sort of connect Canadian culture and Japanese culture. So I went into Asian studies, and then I went into international relations. And then after graduating from university, I decided to work as an interpreter. I thought that would be a great way to maybe connect the two cultures. But then after doing that for a few years, I sort of started getting more, interested in doing grassroots exchanges. And interpretation is great. You're connecting, language. But I also wanted to think of my own projects and think of new creative ways to get people to learn each other's cultures. So that's when I decided to apply for the JET program. Fortunately, I was accepted and I got placed in Fukushima. And when I got my first notice saying that I was going to be in Fukushima, I'm sure it was the same way for you, Doug, too, but I had no idea where it was, to be honest with you. Which is kind of funny because it's the third largest prefecture in Japan.
Yeah, it's pretty big.
Obviously now people know about it, but at that time, really nothing was known about it, I think, overseas. I don't think people would have been able to, point to it on a map, and I wasn't able to either. So I was a bit surprised, but I was looking forward to the challenge. Then I arrived in 2007 and absolutely fell in love with the area. By that time, I was already married to my wife, and I remember telling her, she didn't want to. She's actually from Japan, and we met in Vancouver, but she was really, really enjoying her life in Vancouver. So when I told her that I'm applying for the JET program, I promised her that we'll go back after 1 year, right? And that it'll just be a temporary thing. I'll get to, try out my little grassroots exchanges. But I arrived in Fukushima, and within months, I just fell in love with the area so much so that I pretty much convinced her that we're going to stay here, and this is our new home. And it's been 14 years. No, more than that. No, 17 years. Oh my God. Why did I just say 14?
I know, right? Like I said, almost 20.
17 years. Oh my God.
Don't make us older than we are.
Years. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah, so I'm sorry for the little bit of a long rant, but yeah, that's pretty much how I got involved with Fukushima. Yeah.
Awesome.
Wow, that's awesome. Talking about Fukushima as a prefecture, what is your favorite aspect of living in Fukushima? What is something that Fukushima offers that you just can't really have anywhere else in Japan?
It's sort of similar to what I guess I just mentioned about New Orleans too. Obviously the food and the people, right? When people think about Fukushima and people talk about why they love the area, I think a lot of people say this. It's just got the people here are so warm-hearted, but also culture in general is very multifaceted. It's a very large prefecture, so you can get really good seafood on the coast. You can get really, really good Japanese dishes that you might think of, like meat dishes and all that in the central areas. And then you can go to the western area, which is called Aizu, where they call it the land of the last samurai, right? You can get dishes that have been eaten there since 1,000 years ago. It's almost like a time capsule. The amount of history and culture that those areas have to offer is amazing. So when you're in Fukushima, you can really experience everything you want to experience in Japan, I think. And that's what I love about it. They have amazing food, but also incredible history, really, really cool festivals you could go to. It's really got everything. But in addition to just being an incredible prefecture full of rich culture and everything that a foreigner would want in Japan, to me, what happened in 2011 with the Great East Japan Earthquake also makes it an incredible place for people to visit, because I was obviously there when the Great East Japan Earthquake happened. I was very fortunate to be involved in a lot of revitalization projects, and just seeing how, resilient the area was and how they've taken this incredibly complex, challenge of a tsunami disaster, an earthquake disaster, and a nuclear disaster, how they've actually taken that challenge and used it as a sort of rallying cry for the whole prefecture to sort of unite and come up with really creative solutions to the issues has been absolutely inspiring. And I think that actually adds now to the allure of going to Fukushima. You can go there, not, just experience Japan and see the beautiful scenery and go to amazing places and eat amazing food, but you can also go there to listen to the people and their stories and also see what the prefecture has done to overcome these challenges and really be inspired by it. So I'm a huge fan. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Japan actually officially called me Canada's biggest fan of Fukushima. So
I was about to say, I think of you as Mr. Fukushima. So
yeah. So I'm sorry. Yeah, I don't know why I even started by talking about food, because I guess I'm a little bit hungry right now. But there's way more than that too.
Well, like you mentioned, it's one of the biggest prefectures in the country. It spans almost all of the width of Honshu in its area. Obviously, there's a little piece of Niigata separating it from the Sea of Japan. But you can go from coastal, like beachside, to winter sports and, freezing cold Arctic type temperatures, like you can go a very wide variety of things that you can do there. It just offers so much. And I try to tell people that because I'm a huge advocate for Fukushima as well. Obviously, I'm a little biased. But for all the reasons you said, actually, I went to Aizu Wakamatsu this past summer. It was great. We unfortunately didn't get to meet up, man. Obviously, schedules are always tough on those trips. But yeah, it's just such a wonderful place. I got a question for you, though. Post-JET, did you always plan to stay there, or did that change with the earthquake and tsunami? I don't remember when exactly you finished JET, because I know I finished 2010 in August. Did you stay on JET, or had you already transitioned from JET to your new position?
I did the full 3 years with JET,
yeah,
right until my contract was up. To answer your question, simple answer is yes, yeah. Actually, right after finishing JET, I fell in love with the prefecture. I got so connected and attached to the communities. And also by that time, my wife and I, we had our first child. He was born in 2008 in Fukushima. And just the amount of child support they have here and just everything about Fukushima that I just mentioned, the fact that there's amazing people that are absolutely selfless, that would go out of the way just to help you with anything you need. Just everything about the area we love so much that we decided that I would look for jobs in Fukushima, actually. And although I did look around in Tokyo a little bit as well, too. I felt Fukushima was the right fit. Yeah. And just as I was finishing JET, there happened to be a position opening at where I am right now in Fukushima University. Well, it wasn't opening, it was actually being created. And the position was to open its first international center. This is in 2010, so it might be a bit shocking. Well, it was a bit shocking because Fukushima University is a national university. So you'd think by 2010 they'd have an international center. But surprise, surprise, this is, I guess, a part of Fukushima that maybe isn't so great. It wasn't the most international universities, and it wasn't the most international prefecture either, I guess, too. And they're a little bit behind in their global education, so they're looking for someone to just create an international center and try to get some global programs going. So yeah, it was a perfect fit. It was just an incredible opportunity. So I took that position, and I first started off as administration, basically, where I was in charge of building the first international center. And the rest is history, I guess. From there, I gradually moved on to a faculty position, and now I get to do both.
Awesome. And we're going to touch on that a little bit more in a second. But 2010 is when we both finished off on JET. I mean, we're talking about maybe 8-9 months later. The massive earthquake, tsunami, and nuclear disaster all occurred. How did you get involved with those recovery efforts in the months immediately after 3/11? Were you involved in like any specific initiatives or volunteer organizations in your local community?
Yeah, I like I said, I was in Fukushima. I was actually literally getting ready for a big meeting where we were going to sort of finalize the final plans for the international center that was set to open in April of 2011, actually.
Oh, wow.
Jeez.
Yeah, this is March 11th. And I seriously, it almost sounds like it's fiction, but I was actually getting ready for our like finalizing meeting. It was a Friday. And then the earthquake happened. I still remember that day vividly. You know, it was a terrifying experience. I think the earthquake lasted for more than 3 minutes, right? And as soon as the shaking subsided, we all sort of ran outside, and it was actually snowing, although it was March. So we really felt like it was the end of the world coming. And we all evacuated from the building. And then when we went back in, we turned on the TVs. And the first thing we saw was the image of the tsunami waves coming and hitting the Soma area, the Iwaki areas, all these communities I'd gotten to know really, really well through my work as a JET. When I was doing the JET program, I would visit elementary schools on the coast in towns like Namie, Okuma, Futaba, all towns that had to be evacuated on a monthly basis, basically doing like intercultural workshops and whatnot. So I had a really, really deep attachment to these communities, and I saw them being, engulfed by tsunami waves. And all I could really think of was that I had to do something to repay these communities for all the great things, all the great memories, all the amazing things they'd done for me up to that point. I'd been in Fukushima for 3 years. The communities had been always very supportive of everything. All the projects I would come up with, everything. And I felt like this was going to be my chance to really, really repay them. And sort of, in a way, I guess, make my childhood dream come true of connecting Fukushima with the world again, because I knew that Fukushima was going to need a lot of support from international communities. Just seeing the tsunami, I realized how big of a deal this was. And then, of course, not to mention the fact that then the nuclear accident happened the day after, right? I knew Fukushima was going to need all the support it could get. And I felt like that was going to be my life mission. When I was on the JET program, I would always tell people that my goal for being there was try to help Japanese people, I guess, lose stereotypes towards foreigners, and accept them. And the minute 2011 happened and the tsunami happened and the nuclear accident happened, I decided that an additional goal to that would now be to help the world, I guess, lose its stereotypes towards Fukushima, because I knew that was going to happen with the nuclear accidents. And I was already seeing it. Like in Canada, there were news reports of Godzilla hitting the area and Fukushima being a nuclear dystopia. I don't want to name any names, but really, really, really big, respected major media outlets were reporting that there was a nuclear accident in Fukushima City where I was living. And for those who don't know, Fukushima City is about 50 miles away from the nuclear power plants.
Yeah.
And in between us, there are like 4 huge, huge mountain ranges. So we were quite far, but people really had no idea what was going on. So I felt like I had to do something to try to amend that. So I started working as a resource for media outlets to contact, to ask about the situation, to try to, organize interviews. I worked with a lot of companies to try to send aid over to the disaster affected areas. But in addition to all the work I was doing as someone working for the university, I also decided that I wanted to start my own NPO, basically, like volunteer organization. It actually started because I wanted to help a friend of mine who had his house washed away by the tsunami waves. He also owned a kindergarten, and a lot of his kindergarten kids also lost their homes as well. It started off as wanting to help him, but I started this NPO with not just me, but all the foreigners who were staying behind in Fukushima. And we called the group Hearts for Haragama. Haragama is an area in Soma that was affected by tsunamis. Mm-hmm. We did a lot of fundraising, tried to get people from all over the world to donate to help this kindergarten. But we also went around the disaster-affected areas running international events, actually, in these disaster-affected communities. And the reason why we did that was at that time, those kids that I mentioned, not just those kids, but all the elementary school and kindergarten age, a lot of them in Soma, they were living in gymnasiums. Right. And evacuation shelters. And I don't know if you've ever experienced living in a gymnasium, but it's not fun.
No.
And it's very, very, very stressful. So we came up with the idea that maybe we could try to, run some international events. Like I think we did an Easter egg hunt once, and we also did some mochi making as well. But we decided that we wanted to do these because through our experience through JET, we knew that, kids love international events, right? And when we say we're going to be doing these, we would get huge turnouts too. So we chartered a bus to go around gymnasiums picking up kids, and we did these huge Easter egg hunts, and kids would just love it. And it just gave them a big break from the stressful life of being in a gymnasium. And also, it also gave the parents a big break too. And I remember when we did our first event, one of the mothers of one of the kids who were participating, she came up to us and she was in tears, right? She told us that was the first time she'd seen her daughter smile so much since the tsunami waves came. So it really, really made us realize that there's a lot that as foreigners we could do, but there are also some things that only foreigners could do, right? To help these communities with their healing. So we did a lot of fundraising, but we also tried to do a lot of international events. And by doing that too, I think it was really good for the disaster-affected communities, but it also reminded them that there's also international residents living in Fukushima who care about Fukushima, who were there with them. I'm not saying this to be, critical or anything, but due to a variety of reasons, a lot of foreign residents living in Japan chose to leave Japan when the March 11th disasters happened. Because, they didn't know what was going on. And also a lot of former Jets, they would say that they decided to go back because they didn't want to be a burden on these communities because they already had their hands full just helping Japanese residents. But if they had to think about foreign residents on top of that, that was an extra challenge too, right? Everybody had the right reasons and all that. But because of that fact getting a lot of media attention, I think a lot of people, even in Fukushima, thought that foreigners were running away from Fukushima, and they sort of felt betrayed by that. And that wasn't the case at all. Like everybody had legitimate reasons for going back. And also there were a lot of people who were staying behind. So by doing our volunteer work, we sort of wanted to tell the communities too that, hey, we're here for you. The whole world is here for you, and that we're in this together. Sorry, I hope that answers the question.
No, that
was one of the things I did. Yeah, and then I was also involved in other projects, obviously with the university, doing a lot of information dissemination. I went around with professors who were experts in radiation. We'd go around gymnasiums, evacuation shelters, doing information sessions about radiation to help ease the anxiety of foreign residents. I would do interpretation, for that, etc. So yeah, I was doing a lot of things.
I remember hearing a lot about Hearts for Haragama because I know a lot of former Jets at the time, former Jets now, who were involved. So, I mean, I'm super proud of you guys for all the hard work that y'all did during that and during those years
sounds
after.
Like a lot of work that you put into, just helping the community.
Yeah.
No. It was worth it. It was, it was incredible. Just, being able to do what we can to help these communities that we love so much, right? It really meant the world for us. Yeah.
So part of what you did, obviously, that internationalization, that, hey, we have an international community here that cares and we're here. But another part that you did in 2012 was one of the first projects, if I'm not mistaken, for your international center at Fukushima University, which was the Fukushima Ambassadors Program. And that wasn't so much about foreigners currently in Japan, but bringing people from abroad, international students, young minds, to Fukushima to learn about the disasters and to learn about the responses and its recovery. So can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. That was the first project that the International Center really ran. We were planning on opening the International Center, like I just said, in April 2011. But then obviously everything got a little bit delayed.
Right.
And we were kind of all over the place running. It ended up being delayed until the next year, April 2012. And in May of that year, we ran the first running of the Fukushima Ambassadors Program. The program itself, or something similar to the program, was I actually wanted to do as early as, I would say, even April or May 2011, because I really felt that already, just living in Fukushima and seeing how the community was responding and all the stories that I was hearing, I really felt people could learn so much from just being in Fukushima and experiencing and hearing the stories. Not only would it help them lose any, misconceptions that they have of the area, that there's a Godzilla going on, that this topic, it would also teach a lot of us about empathy and, and how important it is to just care about each other. And also just seeing how these people were coming together. Sorry, let me just give you one example. I think it was on March 12th, or maybe it was maybe 2 days after the earthquake, right? Really, when the nuclear accidents were happening. My family, although we were living in Fukushima City, we didn't have any tsunami damage, obviously, because we're 50 miles away. We did lose electricity, right? We also had no gas running. We had some water running about a week later, but we pretty much had nothing. And my wife was actually pregnant at the time with our second child. And our first child was 2 years old. So it was pretty stressful, right?
Yeah.
And our biggest problem, though, was we had no food because our fridge got knocked over by the earthquake and we had no electricity, right? Mm-hmm. So that was a big problem. So we were walking around Fukushima City looking basically for any food that we could find for our child. And we happened to find one supermarket that was open. And it was hard to believe it was open because the building was almost crumbling, right? So It was in really bad shape, but it was open. We saw a door that was open. So we're like, oh, great. This looks like somewhere we could get some food. So we went in the door that was open. But then we realized the door that we went in was actually the back door that one of the employees of the supermarket had left open, I guess, to throw out garbage or whatever. Actually, they were using a different door as the front entrance. And at the front entrance, there was a huge lineup of people waiting to get in. So we saw that and we went, oh my God, yeah, we're so sorry. And we tried to go to the back of that line. But then as we were doing that, the people who were at the front saw us and said, hey, you have a little kid, don't worry, you guys go first. And they let us stand at the front of the line. So we were just absolutely blown away by that. And then we went in and, we just picked, a couple of things of milk and maybe some food for our kids. And we tried to pay for it. And the supermarket refused to take our money.
Wow.
The reasoning was, this is a hard time for everybody. Just come back whenever everything is back to normal and just pay then, right?
Yeah.
They didn't even ask for a name, right? It was just incredible. And just that was the Fukushima I knew and I loved, right? These people who are so kind-hearted that even in these most extreme of times, they're thinking about others first. And that was what I loved about Fukushima. And it wasn't the Fukushima that was being depicted by the media for sure. And I just felt by letting people see this and experience that firsthand, just from an educational standpoint, would really teach students a lot about just communities building, about it's the way you should be, try to live your life. So I was already talking to some partner universities about maybe doing a short-term program. Of course, they were really worried about radiation, but I would give them all the information, all that. But one big problem was there was a big travel ban placed around the world for people traveling to Fukushima. A lot of governments were recommending that people don't go there, right? Yeah. So we couldn't do the program in 2011, but I continued to talk to a lot of partner universities. And one university in the States called, it was Middle Tennessee State University, MTSU. Their vice president and president, they were huge fans of Japan and huge supporters of Fukushima. They were really, really, really determined to send their students over. So as soon as the travel ban got lifted and as soon as the International Center got organized, they decided to send students over to us to run this program. And we got a lot of negative media backlash. Actually, there was a lot of internet forums that accused Fukushima University and MTSU for being absolutely crazy for organizing a study tour in Fukushima. There were even, I can't believe this, but there were even almost death threats actually sent to the administrative people at MTSU. I think one of the letters said that they're basically sending these kids to their death by sending them to Fukushima to work at the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant or something like that. And it was sent from California, I think, too, those letters too. So it was just, oh my God. But even with that happening, the vice president and president, who were the organizers of the program, they said, this is the reason why we need to do this. This is the exact reason why we need to send students now. So that was really reassuring. And And yeah, we got these students to come, and it was a small program at first. It was just 10 days, just 10 students. And I think we had about 20 Japanese students, and we just spent 2 weeks doing volunteer work. They did homestays at temporary housings. They stayed with tsunami victims, basically, at their homes. And we just did a lot of activities trying to help the communities, but also learn about the situation in Fukushima and how to communicate that with the rest of the world. And it was a huge success.
Yeah, what an incredible program.
Yeah, well, yeah, it was all actually volunteered too at first. Like, there was no funding from the university for the program because they were very skeptical that it would even work. So I actually had to go around getting donations from people just to run the program and help for offsetting the cost. But it was really worth it. The students all came. They left feeling like Fukushima was their second home. And actually 3 of them, I think, ended up coming back, 2 as jets, actually, to Fukushima to live here. So it left a huge impression on them. And after they went back, they just spoke so highly of Fukushima. They ran events about, raising awareness about Fukushima. It was such a huge success that Fukushima University saw that too and said, oh, this is a great idea. And it was also a really, really great learning opportunity for the Japanese students to have these foreign students come and first learn what the real image of Fukushima is overseas right now, which is a bit shocking to them. They didn't realize how bad it was at the time, that people honestly thought that nobody was living there, right? And also, it gave them a lot of good practice talking about Fukushima's issues in English, and finding ways to communicate it properly. So we realized this is a great way to, promote Fukushima and raise awareness, but also was a great way to educate our students as well.
Is this program still going on?
Yes, it is. Yeah. So we ran the program again in 2012 in winter, and we kept doing it. And now we had to stop for 3 years due to COVID because Japan basically closed its borders.
Yeah.
Oh, we know. We know.
Yep, we know all about that.
Oh boy, don't get me started on that. But that was a challenge in itself. But so we had to stop for 3 years, but we restarted it last year, and right as of now, we've ran the program 15 times. Yeah.
Incredible.
With just about 250 students coming from overseas and over 600 students participating on Fukushima University side as well.
Cool. That's great work, man.
It's really expanded. We get students from all over the world. So I think one program we had about students from nine different universities in 6 countries.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so the US, Canada, Turkey, Germany, China, Korea. It's really amazing. Yeah, it's
truly
really,
a global international program.
Yeah.
At the grassroots level. Look at you. Your childhood dream came true, but didn't stop there.
So, Billy, where along this timeline did Hope Tourism come into play? For those unfamiliar, what exactly is Hope Tourism and where the concept came from?
I think the idea for Hope Tourism actually started in 2016.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
So about 4 years after the Ambassadors Program was running. And what Hope Tourism is, it's just a new tourism initiative that the prefecture of Fukushima is organizing, it's running, and it's supporting and funding. It was a way to get tourists to come back. By come back, I mean after the March 11th disasters, the tourism industry in Fukushima really, really got hit hard, right?
Yeah.
And until then, because of the multifacetedness of Fukushima, like I said earlier, and the history and all that, Fukushima used to be a very, very popular location for schools all over Japan to send students on for study trips. Because they could learn a lot about history, they could learn a lot about the Edo period, samurai culture, etc. But that took a really big hit, and the prefecture wanted to revive that basically and start a big educational tourism industry again in Fukushima. They decided to start something called Hope Tourism, where the idea was students from all over Japan would come to Fukushima to learn about the nuclear disasters, basically, what happened, learn about the past, the present, the future, to go see there, meet the people, hear their stories, and try to, take their experiences and apply it to challenges back home in the communities that they belong to. That was the whole idea. They came up with it in 2016 because that was right about the time when Japan basically really started investing a lot into its tourism industries. They saw that as a way to revive the economy that was staggering after the March 11 disasters. And it wasn't just for domestic travelers, it was for international tourism as well. They basically provided a huge amount of money, grants to the Tohoku region, northeastern region, to try to come up with creative ways to really, revive the domestic and international tourism. So Fukushima decided to start something called Hope Tourism. And although the initial target was, like I said, domestic students from all over Japan, the whole idea behind this grant was to try to revive international tourism too. So there was always that mindset of offering the same kind of experiences to international tourists as well. And that's where they basically contacted me back in 2016 to see if they could use the things that we started with the ambassadors program, try to see how we build the curriculum and incorporate those ideas and see if they could apply that into this Hope Tourism and make it part of this a tourism package that they could offer to international tourists. And that's how I started getting involved with Hope Tourism as well. It's still not quite at where we hope it'd be. It's doing really, really well for domestic tourists right now, but for international tourists, we're still sort of finishing off right now all the training for the interpreter guides and everything, and getting, COVID sort of delayed everything a bit too. So we're a little bit behind, but actually 2024, we think this will be the first year that we really start offering Hope Tourism experiences to international tourists. And basically what a Hope Tourism tour is it gives access basically to tourists to these disaster affected communities. People could come here. They could obviously see the effects that the disasters have had. They could learn about the past, but through these tourism experiences, we offer them chances to meet a lot of local people, hear their stories, hear their experiences. And also starting last year, we're now allowing experiences for tourists to go to the nuclear power plants, for example, to go actually inside the nuclear power plants for tours. They're very safe. Nothing's dangerous, obviously. A lot of people don't know this about the power plants, but I would say right now, if you go there, about 96% of the whole area inside, people can just walk around wearing regular clothing. There's really, really low levels of radiation. It's as if you're just at a regular construction site. So we allow that as well. And then we also offer inside the tours experiences like little mini, workshops where people could sort of try to come to terms with the things they've learned and try to, I guess, because there's so much information when you come to Fukushima, you hear so many stories and you feel so affected. It's also really important that there's a little bit of guidance, I guess, at the end to sort of try to gather their thoughts and see what it is that they learned from their experience, and then see how they can maybe apply those lessons to their communities back home, like I said earlier. So you see, you talk, you hear, and then you think, kind of thing. Yeah.
That's awesome. Did the prefecture catch wind of your ambassador program, and did this kind of inspire their Hope Tourism initiative? They kind of glammed off of your idea to apply it more at a bigger level?
Yes, I would say so. Yes. The prefecture was a big supporter, actually, of the ambassadors program as well. Okay. Right. I would often bring the students in to meet the officials and the governor, et cetera, to, bounce ideas off them, et cetera, during the tours too. So they were very aware of what I was doing. And I wouldn't say they based it completely off the ambassadors program.
Sure. Yeah.
I think the idea to use this experience as a learning experience and offer it as educational tourism was already something that the prefecture was planning. But I guess for the international side, just the way, you do that with an international audience, where you start, and how you plan the whole itinerary. And so it's easiest for people who know nothing about Fukushima to understand. I think things like that, they really used what I was doing at the ambassadors program to design. And I was very fortunate to be involved with the designing of the Hope Tourism tours for international tourism right from the beginning.
You said the primary targets were like educational tourism, domestic visitors, gradually expanding to international packages. Yeah. But domestic tourism, you said it was educational, but is this geared specifically towards students? Or is it also for government officials and local community leadership and stuff where they can take trips there and experience this and then take it back home to maybe an area that was not as impacted by a certain natural disaster, but for future proofing for international disasters?
Absolutely. The main target is high school students, right? I guess it's like that back home too, and I think about it. But in Japan, when you're in high school, when you're in the third year of junior high school, you always go on a big study trip somewhere else in a different prefecture, right? And that was the main target. And those were also the people that we wanted to learn about Fukushima, the next generation, going forward and all that. So that was the main target. But obviously, it's not just limited to that. Yeah, the Hope Tourism is open to the people like you just mentioned too, like government officials, and anyone really who wants to come and see and learn directly from Fukushima. It's definitely open to all, but like 90% of the people who are coming on these Hope Tourism packages right now are students. And I think last year nearly about 10,000 students participated on these Hope Tourism tours. So it's really catching on. And now we're trying to provide it to international tourists. I think we're finally ready. It's taken a little bit of time, to be quite honest with you. There are a lot of reasons for this. One being, when international tourists come to Japan, they're usually not on, group tours. They always come, they're traveling individually. And Hope Tourism tours are currently aimed for more group tours, right? Where you charter a bus. And as a group, you go to different places and you meet people and then you do a little bit of volunteer experience, etc. It's not really something where someone can just show up and say, hey, I want to go on a Hope tour, and go like on your own, because that takes a lot more effort. And also the coastal area that was really affected. To begin with, they never really had, the facilities to promote international tourism. It wasn't an area that people went to go on vacations from overseas, for example. So there were no hotels. There are no international speaking guides. Also, the disaster affected areas, majority of the area was closed until, 2018, 2019. And literally last year, the final municipality, 2 years ago, 2022 was when Futaba town finally opened itself.
Mm-hmm.
There was that element as well that made things a little harder to organize. But now we've spent 4 years training guides. We've spent 4 years training facilities to be more, capable of accepting international tourists. And we think this year we'll be able to start providing these tours to individual travelers, with the idea being they could just show up in Fukushima City and say they want to do this, and we could book it for them and they can go on their tours.
Great.
I'm interested in knowing, like, from the participants who've already participated in a Hope Tourism tour.
Yeah.
Have you been able to speak to them or hear from them? Because I'm interested in knowing how they felt about their experience and what their biggest takeaway from it is.
By that, do you mean like international tourists or
both? Really?
Because we've done a few. Yeah, I guess
both. Whoever has already done the Hope Tourism experience.
Yeah, we get. Well, I'm really happy to say that everybody who comes on the tours, they go back with a very, very positive experience. For international tourists, a lot of them go to Fukushima, not really sure what they're going to get from the experience, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't think this is necessarily a horrible thing, but sometimes people are, I guess, motivated by more dark touristy allures of a program. They want to see a disaster area, or they want to see an area that's been affected by a nuclear disaster. So they kind of go there with that expectation, but they leave realizing that they've learned so much from the experience, and that it just made them more aware of larger issues, as like, the fragility of life and their roles and, shaping society. And they just go back feeling really, really inspired, I'd say, about Fukushima. Sometimes people, go in, like I said, with very negative expectations. They want to see people, I don't want to say suffer, but just, kind of with their heads down. But they go there and they realize how positive everybody is and how everybody's doing what they can to revive these communities. And it gives them a lot of hope, right?
Yeah.
For humanity, for mankind, it gives hope that Fukushima will recover from the accidents. We call it hope tourism for that reason, actually, right? Because we want people to feel the hope that we have for this area. There's hope that although we're not fully recovered yet, we're definitely going to be able to do this. And also by people coming, it gives the region hope too, that misconceptions about the area or any reputational damage will be overcome by these people coming here and being inspired and learning lessons from it and taking those back and communicating them. So the hope sort of goes both ways. That's sort of the idea for the tours. And the people who participate in them, they really do get that. So we're very, very, very excited and pleased with what kind of impact it's having. And I also feel people who come on the Hope Tours, they come for, usually about 3 or 4 days, but a lot of them, they end up really building lifelong relationships, attachments to these regions. It's kind of weird when we go to places without the highest expectations and you go there and you're just inspired and you're blown away by it. I think it leaves a stronger impression than if you go to somewhere with really, really high expectations, and then you get that experience like, yeah, I kind of expected that. But when you go there, not thinking, I'll probably hear some stories, but then you go like, oh my God, it just leaves such a strong impression that I find that I'm still in close contact with almost everybody who's been on like my ambassadors program, for example, and even Hope Tourism too. People that I just got to know for 3 days, 4 days, we're still in touch. They're always, and when there's, news about Fukushima, they're always, I see them on, like social media saying, hey, this is actually what's happening. They truly became, I guess, ambassadors, I guess, of the area too. Just like I am big fans. It's so amazing. And it's really what motivates me to continue running these tours and organizing these Hope Tours as well.
So if we have listeners that are intrigued by Hope Tourism and wanting to see these areas firsthand and participate, hopefully come to Fukushima and do this maybe for, like you said, 2 or 3 days or whatever it may be. What are some other possible things that, like, let's say they want to build this into their itinerary, but they also want to explore Fukushima as a whole. What are some other places that you may recommend that would mesh well with this, whether it's in the same region as, like Futaba or Soma or Namie on the coast, or if it's a little bit more further inland? What would you recommend to visit in that area of Fukushima?
Okay, well,
that's a heavy loaded question, right?
do you have 3 hours? And can I pull out my PowerPoint?
You sound like me with Kyoto. Boy. I'm just like, do you have 3 hours to sit here and listen to me talk?
Oh boy, yeah. Like I said, man, oh man, are there ever? Even in Fukushima by itself, there's so much you could see, but where should I get started? It really depends on what you're looking for, I guess.
The time of year too, right?
Time of year too has a
Yeah.
big factor. But what I found a lot of people doing, so let me first start by maybe talking about places outside of Fukushima. But what I find a lot of people do is people who like to travel, to learn something that you can't learn anywhere else, I guess, or experience things you can't experience anywhere else. I find a lot of tourists get a lot out of the Hope Tourism experiences if they visit places like Hiroshima.
Mhm.
If they get like a JR pass, I guess, a Japan Rail Pass, that's a pass that allows you to take the bullet trains all over Japan. They go to places like Hiroshima to learn about the atomic bombs and the aftermath of that. And then they go to Fukushima as well because they're twin technologies, basically. They're both examples of humanity being affected by this thing called nuclear energy. And it really gives them a very, very, very in-depth perspective about what nuclear energy is, what it can do, what we need to do to make sure that these things never happen again. And also think about our energy choices as well. I'm not trying to be pro-nuclear, anti-nuclear. That's not what I'm trying to say, but just to get that perspective, right? And get a feel for what it is and why we need to really, really be aware of what nuclear energy could do and why it needs to be kept safe and things like that. So a lot of people, in a way, sort of connect the two locations in a way. So a lot of people go to Hiroshima, then they maybe go to Tokyo for a little bit, and then they go up north to come to Fukushima to top off the trip. That's a great way to really learn something that you can't learn anywhere else in the world.
Mhm.
For other ideas, I guess a lot of people coming on Hope Tourisms, I think a lot of people like to do their whole trips in Fukushima just because it has so much. Earlier, Doug, you mentioned that you can, be on a beach one day and the next day you could be in the mountains.
Mhm.
In the wintertime, a lot of people like to come to Fukushima just for its amazing skiing scene, for example. There's some incredible, incredible mountains,
Oh, yeah.
incredible powder, and incredibly affordable ski resorts too.
Washiro, right?
Like right now,
That's the...
Washiro or anywhere, man, like Alts Bandai. I take care of a lot of international students, so they're all in their early 20s. For example, right now in Fukushima, if you're 21, you basically get to ski for free.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's just a huge promotion they do. And even if you're not 21, if you go on weekdays, it only costs you $5 to go skiing. So the resorts are extremely affordable.
Oh, yeah.
Compared to what it is like in Vancouver, where I'm from, where it's like $200 now to go skiing in Whistler and whatnot. It's a great way to ski in great resorts with very affordable way to do it too. But then, maybe somewhere in that trip, just spend a couple days going to the coastal areas to learn about what I just mentioned, the nuclear accidents and whatnot. It sort of combines, a great, awesome vacation with also an incredibly enriching educational experience. So people do a lot of that, I'd say. Also, a lot of people like to spend a lot of time just on the coastal areas. Obviously, there's the disaster-affected area. But, for example, where Doug was saying, area called Iwaki City, it's an incredibly, incredibly fun city to be in. There's great seafood, great sushi. You could go fishing. You could go to aquariums. Maybe you tried this when you were there. They made this amazing biking route. It's like a 40-kilometer long bike route that goes along the coastal line. I just did this last week, actually.
Huh.
And yeah, it's beautiful.
Well, maybe I have an idea for my trip this summer.
Yeah, no, that sounds right up your alley, Doug.
Oh my God. Yeah, you could rent bikes and you can drop them off anywhere down the coastal line too.
Oh, cool.
Right? So you could return them anywhere. I basically went from Yotsukura, Doug, you know where that is, right?
Yep,
Northern Iwaki, all the way down to Onahama on one single route. And on the way, you could stop by beautiful shrines, amazing lighthouses, a museum to learn about the disasters. But also then you get down to the aquarium and the fishing port and you could do little cruises. It's a lot of fun. Right now, I think Hope Tourism, we're trying to sort of really promote that idea that you can do Hope Tourism for a day or two, but you got to connect it to the other areas to get the real experience of Fukushima.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
My personal favorite place in Iwaki is actually where you were stationed, Yumoto area.
Oh yeah, Yumoto's amazing.
Yeah, Yumoto's amazing. There's a great hot springs. But also what I love about Yumoto is the Hawaiian culture, I guess.
Yeah, I know, right? It's of all the places I would never expect.
Have you ever heard about that, Jen, the Hawaiian culture in Fukushima? Sorry, just a random question.
No, I think Doug has actually talked about it before.
Oh, okay. It's the last thing you expect, but this area that Doug used to be in called Yumoto, they used to have a huge coal mining industry there. But when that died down, the mining companies basically had to come up with a creative way to, replace the industry and find work. Because these were very, very tightly knit communities, right? And the idea that they came up with was to use tourism. These mines, they're infamous for having a lot of hot springs water, filling up the mines. The more they dug, the more they found a lot of hot springs water and geothermal energy. They decided to use that to heat up this big facility called the Hawaiian Center. And that geothermal energy to heat it up and make it feel like Hawaii. And they trained the daughters of coal miners to do hula dancing.
There's a whole movie
and
about
this
it.
is way back in the 70s, the whole movie about it. Man, what a story, right? And now it's really grown to be one of the greatest places in the world, actually, for Polynesian culture.
Yeah, it's super unique. I love Hawaiians.
And it's a story of resilience. It shows you what the people in Fukushima are like, right? When there's a challenge, they're going to come up with a way to come over it, and they're going to do it as a community, right? I love to tie the Hawaiian story into the Hope Tourism tours as well, because it sort of gives you hope and just reminds you that this area has done it before and they'll do it again this time.
Yeah.
Right?
We gave people suggestions, and honestly, I'm always pushing Iwaki on people.
Nice.
Anytime I get a chance, I go back whenever I get a
beautiful.
chance. So, I mean, it's a wonderful city. So I'm glad you gave
really
Yumoto especially some props. But before we wrap everything up, I wanted to give you an opportunity just to let people know where they can find more information about Hope Tourism or other initiatives that are in the process coming out in the near future, where they can find that information, like if there's a certain website or they're on social media where they can follow. Just wanted to give you an opportunity to share that information, or about the Ambassadors Program. Maybe we have some younger listeners out there that might be interested in the Ambassadors Program. So the floor is yours for that.
For Hope Tourism, specifically speaking, there are websites that you could use. That's really the best way right now. We do have an official, if you just type in Hope Tourism, I think it'll be one of the first websites to pop up. Well, the only website really to pop up. So there is a website being run by the prefecture. Specifically, they have a little organization called the Local Tourism Bureau or whatever that runs it. So there's a contact there that you could contact. There's also a few other websites that maybe...
if you send them to me, I'll put them in the notes.
That'd be great, yeah. There's one website, it's called the Fukushima Hamadori, where you can actually almost virtually experience some of the Hope Tourism places we go to.
Oh, great.
So we have this, VR, AR/AR experience where you could actually go into like some of the museums that we visit to see what's there. We're trying to provide the same experience for the nuclear power plants as well right now, actually, because I think seeing is believing, right? So still not quite there, but you could literally go into the communities virtually to see what it's like. So I have websites for that I'd love to share with you. As for the Ambassadors Program and also the things that are going on at the university, we have a bit of a social media account that's being run by international students as we speak. It's called R Fukushima, OUR Fukushima. It's all student created content, but it talks about the experiences, talks about, what students are doing right now, promoting Fukushima from a student's perspective.
Cool.
For specifics about the program, the best place would be the Fukushima University International Center website, which again, if you don't mind, sorry, I'm going to give you like 5 URLs.
Send it to me, man.
If you don't mind, that'd be great. And also, speaking of the R Fukushima that I just mentioned, the students are really working hard and making content all the time, but we're having right now a little bit of trouble getting more and more followers. So if the listeners of this podcast could check it out, and give it a like or follow us, that would mean the world to them, because it really gives them a lot of motivation. They're trying so hard. Right now, we're trying to do interviews of locals about food, actually.
Oh, cool.
That's why when Jen first asked me about what do you like about Fukushima, I was thinking about food, because yesterday we spent the whole day, talking about food basically and what food we were going to feature next. And we're also, I'm working with local students making Fukushima original herbal tea blend using all the fruits and stuff like that. So cool. I spent like literally the whole day talking about food. So that's why that first popped into my mind. Right? But anyway, yeah. So yeah, it'd be great if you guys could check it out.
Will do. We'll make sure we put that and all the links that you send me. I'll put them all in the notes. So that way, anyone who's listening to this episode, they go into the notes section on your app and find it right then and there. But yeah, thank you so much for joining us, Billy. As always, it was an absolute pleasure. And I think a lot of us, me included, when I listen to this again and when everyone else listens to it for the first time, I think they're going to learn a lot about Fukushima and Hope Tourism. So thank you for sharing all the information you did.
Thank you so much for this opportunity, Doug and Jen. Thank you so much.
Keep up the great work, man. I'm proud of you. You're amazing.
I guess listeners can tell that I'm pretty enthusiastic about the area, and I'm always happy to answer any questions or give any recommendations. So if people need more information, obviously contact me through the website that I mentioned. You can also find me on Facebook or whatever, and feel free to send me a friend request or LinkedIn or whatever, and I'd be more than happy to give you more information about the area and what's happening here.
Awesome. All right, Billy. Thanks again.
Thank you so much.
And that's it for this week's episode. Thank you so much for tuning in to the Krewe of Japan podcast. And a big shout out to William/Billy McMichael for coming on and sharing information about these initiatives and the story of Fukushima's resilience and recovery. Just all around great work going on over there. And I'm so proud of all he's been able to do and accomplish over the last 17 years in Fukushima. If you'd like to learn more about the Fukushima Ambassadors Program, Hope Tourism, or other things going on promoting all that Fukushima has to offer, check out the show notes for more information. Also, if you're interested in learning more about some former jets and their projects following March 11th, circle all the way back to Season 1, where the crew sat down with Wesley Julian and Dan Martin, producers of the documentary Tohoku Tomo and its follow-up docuseries 113 Project, to discuss their experiences filming the project, looking at all of Tohoku as a region, and the international community's commitment to Japan's recovery. That too will be linked out in the show notes. Lastly, on the topic of recovery, we cannot end this episode without mentioning the tragic New Year's Day Noto Peninsula earthquake and all of the areas that were impacted by those events. The road to recovery is not quick, but as Fukushima and the rest of Tohoku have shown, the impacted areas can bounce back stronger than ever. If you are interested in making any kind of contribution to an organization providing some relief efforts, we'll have a couple options linked out in the show notes as well. Have you ever traveled to Fukushima? Are you interested in learning more about Hope Tourism and the experiences that come with it? Share with us on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter/X, TikTok, LinkedIn, Blue Sky, YouTube at Krewe of Japan Podcast, KREWEOFJAPAN PODCAST. While you're there, give us a like, comment, follow, retweet, share, skeet. That's for Blue Sky. Whatever floats your boat. Let us know how you're enjoying the podcast. Or perhaps, maybe you prefer to provide your feedback in a more private setting. Send us an email at krewofjapanpodcast@gmail.com, KREWEOFJAPANPODCAST@gmail.com. And of course, speaking of feedback, if you enjoyed this episode today, or maybe some of our previous episodes, feel free to leave us a 5-star rating and or review on your favorite podcast streaming app. Every single one of those 5-star ratings and reviews helps others interested in Japan and this kind of content find the podcast. Or just tell a friend. We appreciate that too. Any and all support is incredibly appreciated. But that's it for today. Until next time. Looking to start your own podcast and don't know what platform to use? Tell me about it. When we started the Krewe of Japan podcast, we tried a bunch of the big name recording platforms, but always came back to the one we're still currently using to this day, Zencastr. Zencastr is now the all-in-one solution making podcasting easy. In addition to its high audio and video quality for podcast production, Zencastr provides a full suite of production tools to record, produce, and publish studio quality content from the comfort of your home. Just log in through your browser and start recording. It's that simple. For us, we simply send out links to our guests and they join the lobby. But before you know it, it's all done and you have your studio quality audio and up to 4K video right there ready for you, right when you finish. The best part is having their multi-layered backups to ensure that your recordings are in the highest quality, regardless of anyone's internet connection stability. With Zencastr's all-in-one podcasting platform, you can create your podcasts in one place and distribute to all the major destinations. It's really that easy. Go to zencastr.com/pricing and use our code Krewe of Japan, KREWEOFJAPAN, and you'll get 30% off your first month of any Zencastr paid plan. We want you to have the same easy experiences we do for all of our podcasting and content needs. It's your time to share your story.